Hey everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of this Legendary Gems series with my friend Quetzorian. Today we're going to be looking at other gems that don't quite fit into the category of attacking or defensive gems. Let's go. So this is part 3 of the Legendary Gem discussion with my friend Pete, as most of you know as Quetzorian. And these gems are being labelled as other gems. They have similar properties or common properties with each other, but don't all necessarily fit into the attacking or defensive lists. So starting off, we're going to be taking a look at movement speed gems. So Pete, do you want to kick us off with this category?
Okay, right. Well, this one, Ricia, is a relatively straightforward category, but I just thought it was worth grouping together all of the gems that have some form of movement speed aspect to them. So I don't think we need to spend too much time on this list, but I'll just quickly run through them. So we've got Blood-Soaked Jade. Is that it adds 10% to your movement speed? It's a flat movement speed increase, and that's really you just have it permanently on your character.
Yeah.
Bottled Hope, another movement speed gem, but what it does is it requires you to trigger a buff on your characters. You need to use a skill to give yourself a buff, and that will trigger Bottled Hope. But it does have the cooldown, so it's got the 6 seconds burst of movement speed and damage increase, and that could be extended by beneficial effect duration. Concentrated Will. This one's slightly different. It increases your movement after triggering a dash skill. But what's interesting about this gem is it has a 6-second cooldown. So if you're using a lot of dashes, particularly if you're a monk, because there's lots of different dashes on a monk, or any class that's using more than one dash as part of the build, Concentrated Will is one that you may wish to consider, and it will just give you that increase in movement speed.
Yeah.
Hellbound Desire, the new gem, the new version of Blood-Soaked Jade, but a lot of people are using it alongside Blood-Soaked Jade, so they're giving themselves that 20% increase in movement speed. It works in exactly the same way as Blood-Soaked Jade. It's just a flat 10% increase to your movement speed. There is a cap on movement speed, and that can sometimes be complicated in terms of calculating how it is from different sources. So I won't cover that in this video, but there are other resources to describe how movement speed works in the game.
I actually made a video on that, so I will link that in the caption for people that
Oh
want
yeah, of
to
course,
know.
yeah, your video from about a month ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it'll just give people an idea of how these gems work within that, because obviously some movement speed is passive, so that's the movement speed that is obviously permanent versus movement speed buffs and ways that you can work around that to gain even more movement speed without actually increasing the actual movement speed of your character.
Yeah. So Pain Clasp. Now, some people might be surprised to see Pain Clasp on this list, but its secondary effect, which you can gain from rank 3 onwards, as long as a nearby enemy is suffering from a continuous damage effect. And that wouldn't necessarily need to be done by you, but for instance, if you're in a battleground and you wanted to use Pain Clasp, but you also want some movement, that's potentially a use case for it. So it does fall onto this list. It's not the classic example of a movement speed gem, but I think at rank 10 it can give you something like 6% increase in movement speed. So it's one to consider if you're just looking for a little bit more speed on your character. Grim Rhythm. Now this one is a battle pass only gem. So this one came along maybe about a year after the original Battle Pass gem, which I think was Fervent Fang.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Grim Rhythm, the main effect is to stack your attack speed. So whether that be primary attacks or skill attacks, your attack speeds reach, or your stacks of attacks reach up as high as 10. And at 10 stacks, you get a movement speed bonus. And I believe at rank 10, that goes up to 12%. Whether or not you get the full 12% in Battleground, I can't remember how that works. I think it might give you that, but maybe check the small print on that one. But that's another example. And last one on this list is Blessed Pebble, which again, it's a little bit like Bottled Hope in the way it works, but it's triggered off a beneficial effect. and you get a little increase in movement speed. It's a 1-star gem, but if maybe for like a newer player or a low spender, it's a way of getting movement speed if you don't have the resources maybe to build the likes of a Blood-Soaked Jade or a Hellbound Desire.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason for these lists that Pete has put together, is so that actually whatever you spend in game, whether you spend or not, there are options here for you on what you can actually use to achieve these different effects from them. Definitely.
Yeah, I like to think these lists have a little bit of something for everyone and something for all budgets. So, yeah, that covers movement speed. But Richard, do you have anything else that you want to say on the category?
Not really. I mean, with the movement speed ones, I think Bottle Tope is the one to look out for, because as you said, you do need to be using a buff skill, and that I think is what catches a lot of people out with this gem. Is that it's what we've said before in the previous gem videos, is actually making sure that these gems work within your build. So if you are using a build that does not have buff skills, Bottle Tope will not work in the way that you want it to if you're looking to get that movement speed from that. So you might want to consider then maybe using either the Blood-Soaked Jade or Hellbound Desire in that kind of build if you're looking for a legendary gem to give you that movement speed. But that's, you've pretty much said everything about them. So, but that would just be my 2 cents on that. So next up we have the skill cooldown reduction gems as well. So we do also have Bottle Tope here and Surging Sea. Now I've used both of these gems, and Pete knows that I actually really love the Surging Sea gem. Really, really good gem for lots of different reasons. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on it as well, Pete.
Yeah, I've not really used Surging Sea. I wasn't really using spam builds as a wizard.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's probably the class that makes most use of the Surging Sea gem. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think for wizard, and also possibly I've used it on Tempest. Works really, really nicely on Tempest, because obviously a lot of the builds are based around activating skills and then using the primary attack alongside those skills. And also for Demon Hunter, I would say that is probably the 3 classes that Surging Sea works beautifully for. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One other thing I would say, so Surging Sea, I think it's a secondary effect, this one, isn't it? The skill cooldown. So it would be from rank 3 upwards, if I'm right there. It's like rather than it being the main effect.
It's not the main effect for that gem, but it's probably one of the most beneficial effects of it, simply because for a 1-star gem, it's really powerful. But it's obviously the other thing that it's doing is increasing your skill damage. So it's increasing your skill damage and then obviously reducing the skill cooldown, which is ideal for a lot of skill-based builds.
So it's doubly effective for those spam builds, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You're getting every benefit from that gem possible.
And then also one other thing we'll just say about Bottle Tope, the skill cooldown reduction is from rank 3 upwards. So it's on those odd ranks that you're getting the increase. I believe at rank 9 it goes up to 6%. So I think it's 1.5% at rank 3.
Yeah.
And it'll be 3% at rank 5. So just again, another consideration is just check the small print on all these gems in terms of from which rank you're getting the effect. Because if it's not the primary effect, the secondary effects are only from rank 3 onwards.
Yeah, again, it's a bit like movement speed. It's a pretty straightforward category, but it's one that you've put in there just so that people can have an idea of how these gems are working. And obviously, as you mentioned, it's not always the primary effect. Sometimes it is the secondary effect, and that's why some of these gems have been in multiple lists in this series so far. So let's move on to the next category. So up next, we've got total loss of control.
Right. Okay. What we'll do is I'll just refer down to the base of this list where there's a note. I'll put in a note just to explain about total loss of control.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't loss of control, it's total loss of control, and they are different.
Yeah.
Lots of things cause a loss of control, but total is specifically certain effects that have a clear name, like stun, freeze, fear. And unfortunately, blind is one of those categories that can be a bit variable. It isn't always a total loss of control.
Yeah.
So, but it would normally state if it is. I know that the blind from the Keersling gem, it does count as a total loss of control. And I believe maybe is it something on a Crusader? Some of the Crusader essences maybe give blind, and that actually does count as a total loss of control.
Yeah.
So that one's a little bit more variable, but I want it to be clear. This is what we're talking about is really what you might refer to as a hard stun. So a stun, a freeze, or a fear. and it's less clear.
Yeah.
But then what I've done with this list is I've tried to list what the effect is by each of these gems.
Yeah.
And at the top of the list, we have the gem which kind of makes use of these effects. So Chip of Stone Flesh. Now, I've used this one extensively in the past. I use it less so these days, but it is really good for certain builds.
Yeah.
I used it a lot on Wizard. I used it a lot on Monk. Any class that has, through their skills and or their essences, that can actually trigger a total loss of control, that's good. Otherwise, you're requiring on a gem to proc it, or sort of like a reforge family bonus or something like that to proc these things. So Chip of Stone Flesh is a really good gem if you are using this.
Yeah.
But bear in mind that Chip of Stone Flesh, the duration of it will relate to the effect you're using. So, for instance, if you've got a Fear from Crimson Behelit, and that I think was listed as 1.5 seconds, Chip will only be active for that 1.5 seconds.
Yeah.
But it can be extended by the likes of the Baron set.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? Misery Elixir, Potency. So those are other considerations you want to be looking at for this list.
Yeah.
So do additional research on total loss of control, but this list is really to bring together the gems that are considerations for it.
Yeah. And with Chip of Stone Flesh, as you said, it's just highlighting that gem will not work unless you are using a total loss of control. If you are not using a total loss of control, again, you need to consider what you want to get from your build and whether Chip of Stone Flesh is the correct gem or not. As you said, for Wizard, I use this gem actually quite a lot. I would say Necromancers were one of the other classes that used it quite extensively for a while.
On the Necromancer. Yeah, I think I used the Wandering Skulls thing for this. I think they're still in game, those ones, but you maybe you know better than I do. You can have it. I think there's an offhand that triggers the Wandering Skulls, and then you can maybe give you. Is it? I forget which essence or what.
I can't think of what the essence is called, but I know exactly which one you mean, and it basically generates these giant skulls that follow the enemies
and
around the map.
There's a mage hand that gives you fear when you're using that skill.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the thing. It's not classed as a summon, but anyway. But yeah, it would work for Necros as well.
Yeah. So it's whether you're getting it's whether you're getting the loss of control, as you already mentioned, from another gem or from an essence in your build, basically. But you need to have that total loss of control to be able to actually benefit the most from Chip of Stone Flesh.
I think most older players will have probably replaced Howler's Call by now, or they might be using it, just as almost like a resonance gem and putting it and socketing an auxiliary onto the socket. But if anyone is still using Howler's Call, it does have a stun with it. I think at rank 9 it gets up to 48% chance to proc, but it's got a 20-second cooldown on it. It's not a gem I would recommend, but if for some reason people are still using it, it fits in this list. Moving on, so we've mentioned about Crimson Behelit, that triggers on both of the procs. So you've got 2 different cooldowns on Crimson Behelit. You've got a 20-second cooldown on the attacking aspect of the gem, which procs fear, and then you've got a 1-minute cooldown on the defensive aspects if you go below 50% life or if you're above 50% life. So the different cooldowns each have a fear aspect of them.
Just to highlight quickly with Crimson Behelit as well, that gem was an event gem, so if you are someone that is new to Diablo Immortal, it will not be available to you.
Yeah,
unless
it might be available still on the marketplace. But good. That's a good point, Ricia. You need to already have the gem. Much. Kirsling. If anyone know, you're watching the start of a Bond film and you're watching that lens sight and you've got the screen's black. If you ever see that kind of effect in game, that's because somebody on the opposition team in a battleground is using a Kirsling against you. That's the kind of effect it does. I never found it particularly harmful to me. It is just a blind. It slows you down a little bit, and resistance will help you defend against it.
Yeah.
It makes this list. I used to use it quite a lot as a gem, but I don't think it's one that people should really be reaching for these days. There are better gem options.
Yeah, definitely.
But I've included it anyway. Another one that we shouldn't be using would be Nightmare's Wreath. It has a 10% chance on kill to proc fear, but it is all surrounding enemies as well. Trying to do that in a battleground, I mean, the only person that would be doing that many kills would be a whale, and they wouldn't be using a one-star.
Exactly, yeah. But it's there because it fits in this category.
It fits this list. I did find one very, very specific use case, and it was where I was using a chip of stone flesh. I was using Nightmare's Wreath. I was doing in castle defense.
Yeah.
And you can, because you're doing so many kills, that can be useful for proccing chip of stone flesh, but that is a really niche use case.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, that gem. It wouldn't even be recommended when the game was released. Mocking Laughter is a PvE only, and it works by taunting specifically monsters, not bosses.
Yeah.
But it does proc chip of stone flesh. And actually, this was a little gem recipe I used to give to newer starters and lower spenders. Whereas if they had literally a rank 1 chip of stone flesh and they had a rank 1 to rank 10 Mocking Laughter, it can be an interesting combo. But there'd be other things you can do in game these days that, I mean, it makes the list, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
Yeah.
Pain of Subjugation. This one isn't a total loss of control as such. It's actually more useful than that, because this gem only needs a loss of control. But if someone's a low spender and they're running a total loss of control setup, this gem can increase your damage. And I believe at rank 10, that would give you 16% increased damage to enemies suffering from loss of control, which in the battleground is pretty much everyone. So anyone you're attacking. Bear in mind, 16%, multiply it by 0.3, it's not a great increase, but you'll have the strife in PvP. But I've just included it. It maybe should be more a footnote rather than a listed gem, but I just want to explain about that one as well.
Yeah.
That's all of my points on this one, Ricia, unless you had anything else to mention on total loss of control.
I don't really have anything else to mention for it. I think it's one of those categories that it may be suited more to specific classes than everyone. And obviously it's very build dependent again, depending on what kind of build you're playing, what kind of play style you enjoy. Is I would say that this category kind of fits to more specific classes, as we've already mentioned when we started discussing it. Maybe wizards and necromancers would benefit most from it. But yeah, it's good to know what you can actually use to get the total loss control and what legendary gems do it, so that you're not always having to rely on obviously skills for that. And
I would say that generally skills or essences based on their duration are probably the more worthwhile using with Chip of Stone Flesh.
Yeah, definitely.
So the rest of the gems in the list, the one I'd really pick from that list would probably be Crimson Peelet. If people have it and they use it, I'm a big fan of that gem.
Yeah, definitely. So after total loss control, we now have summons and also triggers up to every 6 seconds. So 2 different categories. So starting off with the summons, we've got Echoing Shade, Follower's Burden, and Freedom and Devotion. So Pete, would you like to expand on these ones?
Yes. All 3 of these gems were available at launch. So I would be quite interested to see a new summon gem come along at some point. But these are the ones we have at the moment. Echoing Shade is 5-star, and the way you upgrade it, you will get an extra summon at certain milestones, up to a maximum of 3 summons at rank 7. But the way it works slightly differently in the way that it upgrades, in that you get like an extra summon, and then you get more life and longevity on the summon.
Yeah.
So that's how the upgrade process works. I still use Echoing Shade in my farming builds when I'm doing when I'm just trying to farm an area. I use them as an additional way to try and maintain the farm.
Yeah.
I still find it really useful for that situation. It's not what I'd use in PvP, and elsewhere in PvE I wouldn't use it. But I think with the auto farming, Echoing Shade would be my pick from this list.
Yeah.
And also Freedom and Devotion, just to extend the duration. 24% increased duration on your summons in PvE There's no strife on that, so that is really useful, and especially if you've got a lower spender who's got, maybe you've only got like an Echoing Shade at a lower rank and you wanted to increase the duration, or you're running, maybe you're a Necromancer with summons, you're monks have summons. I think most classes have some form of summons. I ran a wizard with, I think it was something like 17 summons because of the way I built it.
Yeah,
So
nice.
I had this very extreme build where I had both types of beam, so the frost and the disintegrate. I had 5 on each of them because of the the extra affixes.
Yeah.
And then I had a helm that gave me a couple of serpents, and I had a storm bird as well that gave me 2 more of those. And then I had Echoing Shade in the mix, and there was some other aspect to it as well. But yeah, you can build quite a heavy summon builder. Strangely, I think Wizard is probably the one that can have the most summons on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Forward's Burden, it's a 2-star gem. It gives you a small increase based on the number of summons up to a maximum of 6, up to I think 18% damage increase, and then you also have a damage reduction aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
Might suit some people. I personally haven't used it in a long time, but Forward's Burden is a reso gem for other things, so it's one of those things, if you happen to have it because you've been using it as a reso gem for certain farming builds, maybe it might be useful. But yeah, my pick from the list would probably be Echoing Shade and Freedom of Devotion. But generally, I don't use those gems for many things.
It's more, again, it's using them in a build that works for you. I haven't used any of these gems for a long time. I used to use Echoing Shade when I first started playing Diablo Immortal, when we didn't have the auto farm available. I would actually use Echoing Shade, again, as you mentioned, to keep up kill streaks when you're farming in open world, and it was quite helpful for that. I think I had it up, ranked up enough to have 2 summons. Obviously at rank 10 you get 3 summons, so it's affected by that. But there aren't many summon gems, as you can see from the list, and as Pete already said, it would be quite interesting to see if we get an additional one to that at some point, especially with obviously new classes like Druid and Warlock that actually have a lot of summons available to them.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to see.
Oh yeah,
if
of course,
change.
Warlock does have some. Yeah. I mean, certainly with that the Demonic Portal, I've got a farming build for my Warlock at the moment, and I am using Demonic Portal, Echoing Shade, and also the Soul Gorger. And I think I'm even using the primary attack. I'm setting that as something that can be eaten by the Soul Gorger.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, there's a few options on Warlock. So yeah, these summon gems can be used in that context.
Yeah, maybe a bit more useful now than they were to previous classes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's summons, and we have the triggers. So triggers is this is a bit of a unique section that you've made, because obviously it's different. These gems have different triggers, basically. And I'll let you talk through them.
Really, what I wanted to do was I identified that there are several gems within the game that have this 6-second cooldown on them. And I find that incredibly useful, because depending on what the effect is, they can be really good for it, mainly in PvE, for keeping a farm going, or if you're trying to use them to spread effects.
Yeah.
So I use them for farming. I also use them to spread dots, and sometimes kind of use them together. So Svensson's Haunting. Now I know everyone seems to dislike this gem intensely and hasn't used it in since the game launched, pretty much. But Svensson's Haunting is a 5-star gem. So if, for instance, you use it as a reso gem for other things, I actually use it in farm builds sometimes. You'll see a little proc of purple shoot into the air, and I think at slightly higher ranks you can maybe get 2 of them proc as well. You've got a chance to summon an extra one, and it can be quite good for just maintaining a farm. You could actually build. I've tried creating a build just using these gems, and I think I used 1 extra gem with it as well, maybe Seeping Bile.
Yeah.
But actually no, I didn't have Concentrated Will. I didn't have a copy of that, but I used the others. Concentrated Will, I've mentioned it in the previous one where we were talking about movement speed. But if your character is doing dashes, you would have it proc a trigger, and it summons this effect to kind of bless you. I think it's supposed to give you increased movement speed, but also increased damage as well. So maybe less useful in a farming build, but you might find a use for it. Volatility Shard, the trigger is on kill. So a great one for if you've managed to do a kill and you're now looking for something else to proc an effect on, that impacts the nearby enemies to the one that's just been killed. So useful in things like castle defense or anywhere where you've got a lot of mobs, namely farming. So that is a useful use case for this gem. Now, Mercy Harvest, if I was going to use this gem to try and maintain a farm, the fact the trigger is that below 30% life, if the character's below 30, the enemies are below 30% life, I'm still attacking them, or they're still attacking me. So it's less useful for this list, but it's quite a nice gem effect. I just like the look of this instantaneous Reaper just do a little flash. I think it's one of the most beautiful effects in the game. But certainly, if you did want to maintain a farm, it would maybe have some impact, but it wouldn't be maybe the pick of this list. Igneous Scorn, however, all you need is a critical hit. Now, I've run this gem without any roiling consequence or any other increased critical hit damage. Maybe the only thing would be the runes on my offhands to increase critical hit chance, but that would be the only thing to increase it. If you think about it, the amount of damage you're doing, and especially if you're using it in a dot build, it's very easy to trigger that gem. And again, similar to Volatility Shard, it procs and does an explosion to the mobs around the one that's just been hit critically. So again, it's one of those, for more of a lower or mid spender, if you've got this gem available, it's just a way of keeping the farm going. Wouldn't necessarily use it in PvP, although I suppose theoretically as part of a dot setup, you could maybe do that if you're using, say, Roiling Consequence and using Seeping Bile, that kind of thing, and using maybe a Void Spark as well, putting together a recipe of items that can then set off a chain reaction. I love chain reactions in this game. I love procking effects and seeing these things in game, so that fits the list. Now, they've got Spectreglass and Jolted Eye. Can I just defer to you now, Ricia, because I know Spectreglass is one of your favourites.
Yeah, Spectreglass is a really useful gem, especially for PvP. I would say for a low spender to mid spender, this is a must-have gem. Really, really good in PvP, and it works with basically breaking down the enemy's armor, which is amazing because that's what you want to be able to do, to be able to obviously hit them. And it is a really good gem, but you can use this well in PvE as well. It's not just a PvP gem. It works really nicely in PvE for things like raids and stuff like that. It's another gem that's a little bit of an all-rounder. I would say it's good for every class, and it's another 2-star gem like we've spoken about before. That's almost too good to just be a 2-star gem, in my opinion. But yeah, it's one thing with these triggers gems as well, from the way that you've just been talking about different builds that you'd use them in, is that I want people to watch these videos and actually have fun with making builds and not just be worrying about top DPS, because it's something that we've discussed. It's about having fun with it and trying these things out.
On that topic, actually, it's something I did want to mention, Ricia. Players can go to the testing area and not using the dummies, just go to the NPC, the non-player character at that area, and set yourself a test battleground. You can try out any of these gems risk-free. You're not putting at jeopardy your battleground rank. You can just go in there. You can decide whether you want to select Convoy, if you want to practice Convoy, or if you want to. Is the other map called Assault, the original map?
Yeah.
And I do this all the time. Whenever I'm trying out different gem combinations to try and, particularly for PvP, I can go in there and set up a test battleground and see if something would work. Now, admittedly, the level of opponent that you get varies wildly in that area. Well, it can vary quite a bit. You can get really quite strong teams and really quite weak teams, but you generally get a pretty good sense of whether a build works by testing in there.
Yeah.
So that is, please do try these gems out, even if it's a rank 1 gem, just try it out or get it to rank 3 if you need that effect, and actually see how it works in that test area. That is a free pass where you can do it. Nobody's watching you. You're not like, if you've made a stupid build and it doesn't work, you can just jump straight back out of it. You don't even have to wait for the match to finish.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that is a good place to go testing.
It's a really good addition to the game that I don't think many people use. But it's a nice way of actually being able to get an idea of what it's like in a real. Obviously, it's not real life because it's in Diablo Immortal, but a real life situation rather than just checking it on.
It's
on
like
the dummy.
a simulation for the battleground, and just to try and figure out whether your build has any very obvious flaws in it, or if it seems to be working really well. I've got some crazy MVPs in those test battlegrounds. Normally, the main game isn't quite as kind to me, but it's a good way of trying out swapping gems in and out, and you can see in a few seconds whether it's working.
Yeah, exactly. And now the last gem on this list is the Jolted Eye. Now this is almost a replacement for the Skybreakers set that was removed from game.
It came along at the perfect time, just as we lost one thing that I absolutely loved for my farm build. Always used 2 pieces, sometimes 4 pieces of Skybreakers Bolt. But yes, the Jolted Eye. And I would also use that one with the there's a new Paragon skill, or a new-ish Paragon skill. It wasn't the most recent ones, but it was the one before that.
Oh, something Storms.
Brewing Storms.
That's it, Brewing Storms, yeah.
Brewing Storms with this gem.
Yeah.
I use this gem as part of my farming build. So I'm currently trying to do the Paragon climb to 1600. I'm currently at 1595 as we're recording this.
Nice.
And this gem I really enjoy. I've only got it at rank 7. I've got the copies to build it for higher, but I don't really need it. I literally just want it for the effect.
Yeah.
So building it to the top rank isn't an urgent, pressing priority for me at the moment.
Yeah.
But I will get it up to rank 10 at some point. But I think that's one that it's got that every 6 seconds. This is one of the things I wanted people to realize is there's a lot of gems that have a 6-second cooldown instead of 20 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
And including 1 or 2 of these in your builds can just make that build just feel like it's just a little bit sharper.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's one of the reasons I was so keen to make this list, because I've not seen people categorize the gems and break them down like this before. And it's one of the reasons I came to you with this list and wanted to, have it on your channel.
And highlight it for people. I think for people that may be new to Diablo Immortal, or people that struggle with putting builds together, it's just a good way of actually being able to look at different categories and thinking, right, what do I want in my build? What do I want to get from my build? Can I get this from a legendary gem instead of from an essence? Because if you already have the set of essences that you love, but you're maybe looking at what legendary gems you can use alongside that to make the build more effective, that's the whole point of this list. And like you mentioned, with these having the 6-second cooldown, I mean, something like having Spectre Glass with a 6-second cooldown, yes, it's on critical hit, but it's like how that gem works, and same with Jolted Eye as well. You're actually getting a lot of benefits from that. So yeah, it's just playing with these and reading through the lists, or watching these videos and listening to how we've obviously mentioned about using them in different builds, to give you ideas on how to play with them yourself, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
So moving on to the next category, we have channeled skills. So we have Ironbane, Tear of the Comet, and Trickshot Gem. Do you want to expand on this, Pete?
Yes. Okay. So we have 2 deleted or 2 gems that are deleted from the drop pool at the top.
Yeah.
And then probably the pick of the list, which is the Trickshot Gem. But Ironbane, I once used this on a Vault PvP build. So I can't remember. I was the Shadow, so we were attacking the Vault, but we got up to the boss area, and I had I think I might have had 3 beams on my Wizard Disintegrate build, and that's a channeled skill. I was using the Ironbane, so I was also using the Scour Cut, so that was a way of extending the beam to make it longer.
Yeah.
And I was standing actually at the mouth of that opening, just where the boss is on the 4th floor. and sending that beam down to attack the enemies and melt their armor. So
Yeah.
my teammates who actually did damage could step in and actually do that. It was moderately effective, but that I've never really heard of anyone using this gem. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Just I think the way the gem works, or the bonuses on it, it didn't quite resonate with people, and it's a shame, because it is nice to have really good, if you've got something like you're a channel build, something that can really amplify and make use of that.
Yeah, I think the issue with Ironbane is that it's the 10% chance to dissolve enemy armor, whereas you could then, I mean, Spectre Glass is newer, and Spectre Glass kind of just completely replaced this. Because obviously it is breaking down enemy armor, and it's not just that low chance of it. So I think,
and you're not stuck to a channel skill for
exactly.
it.
So I think Ironbane that's part of the reason I imagine it's been removed from the drop pool as well, because obviously when they remove gems from the drop pool, it's not only to make it easier for people to find the gems they actually want, but it's usually based on market sales and people crafting these gems and whether or not people are crafting them. And I would say Ironbane, unfortunately, now is one of those gems that's been retired more to just being used when it's needed as the resonance gem for those resonance bonuses.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, I think the 10% thing is just too low, and also the effect was too minimal, which is why it hasn't really worked. And similar one with Tear of the Comet. Again, I think the actual, I like the idea, particularly on if using a Demon Hunter with the Strafe build. I think it sounded like a good use case, but again, the damage was a bit light, and you've got these 2 extra missiles that proc, but just somehow didn't quite work. I think actually though, Oroth did do some kind of build where he made use of it. This was probably a year and a half ago. But I really never found use cases for this gem. So, but Trick Shot gem, was it 24% increased chance at, 24% increased duration at rank 10?
Yeah.
Obviously, that would be strifed in PvP, but PvE, if you're running a farm build that requires a Trick Shot gem, I've used it periodically for that type of thing. If you find that the channeling, you're just running out of channeling, the extra 24% is quite a significant bonus, especially for a 1-star gem.
Definitely, yeah. I think for a 1-star gem, if you're using, so again, it's really, I would say Wizard is one of the best case scenarios for that gem, really, if you're using a channeling build for Wizard. And again, mainly in PvE, Trick Shot gem might be quite a nice one to extend that channeling
and actually
skill.
Trick Shot gem was one of the first gems I built up to rank 10 as my original class of Wizard. I used it. So, but yeah, I think that kind of covers the channel skills and gems, unless you've got anything else to add, Ricia.
No, I think it's another category that's pretty straightforward. They're basically gems that work alongside your channeling skills. Obviously, Trick Shot gem out of all of them is probably the most useful to people at this point in the game, and the others, it's just the percentage is a little bit low. The percentages on them is a little bit low, I would say. But it's nice having them categorized for people that want to know of a gem that they could obviously use alongside ones that they've already, what they've already got in their build and what they've potentially already built together. So next up we have the Armour Break gems.
Yes.
So these are obviously, there's only 3 of these again. One of them we've already covered, which is Spectre Glass, but we've also got more of the Deep and Fated Trail.
Yes. Now, actually, there are a few armor breaks, in the game through various other means.
Yeah.
And I believe I've anecdotally heard, but I've not included it on this list, that Chip of Stone Flesh also counts as an armor break. But I tried to research it online. I couldn't see anything formally written down and identifying it as such. So if anyone's thinking Chip of Stone Flesh should be here, it probably should, but I've not included it. And that's the reason.
Okay.
More of the Deep. I've not really used this one myself. I've tried it a couple of times. I just found there's always been gems I preferred, but maybe it's just down to my own personal play style and how I like to attack. But I think more of the Deep will be covered in a future category, so we'll maybe come back to this one in one of the other lists.
Yeah.
But basically, your trigger is to deal damage, and I think it is a 2-second wait. in order to trigger that Armour Break, which can be good for nerfing the enemy. So Fated Trail, this gem does tend to be used by the higher reso players, just simply because the main effect of the gem requires a certain amount of life in order, and how the damage works on that.
Yeah.
But the Armour Break aspect of it would be useful to lower reso players, and effectively you just need to deal damage to enemies that are classed as nearby. Ricia, I think we've discussed about nearby enemies and what the categorization is, but is there a formal definition that you're aware of?
I don't think there is a formal definition. I don't think it is anywhere in game that actually states how close nearby is, but think of it as more of a melee range than than a range.
Yeah, basically, if you're a ranged attacker, if you're a wizard trying to attack from the opposite side of the map, maybe don't be using this gem with the intention of using this Armour Break effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we'll maybe leave it at that on this one, and then back to again one of your favourites, Ricia. Spectre Glass is on this list, and I believe the Armour Break's the secondary effect, and I think it procs for, is it about 2 seconds at rank 10?
So it's, critical hits shatter enemy armour for 2 seconds, increasing the damage they take from you by 28%. So the increased damage is quite high from this, and then increasing your critical hit chance against them by 4%. So your critical hit obviously triggers it, and you get that Armour Break, and it's basically just shattering the enemy's armor from this one, and it is a very effective gem, as we've discussed previously.
Well, that covers the Armour Breaks, unless there's anything else to add.
No, I think it's quite it's a pretty straightforward category. It's just that they work in different ways, and again, it's knowing which one to use in your build. Again, Spectre Glass is a good all-rounder. More of the deep, I would say, something we've discussed with this gem before is the fact that the animation for it makes it very easy to jump out of the way. If you've got a dash skill. So I would say out of all three of those, probably Spectre Glass is the one that is most useful to all classes. Fated Trail is probably better for slightly more closer ranged builds. You can play a ranged class and use Fated Trail, but you would have to be using a build where you are closer to your enemies to actually get the most benefit.
Though, Ricia, if these procced at the same time, Fated Trail does have that Immobilize on it. So even if they see the big fish coming, they might not be able to move out of its way.
Yeah, if you're using the two together.
Perhaps a better gem for that would be, there'd be other gems that could maybe take more advantage. But if you've got a way to immobilize or slow or freeze the player in place with the more of the deep. And again, this comes down to build. Build your character. If you're building your character around a particular gem, what are the downsides of that? So if the downside is you have that 2 second delay, what can you add into your build, be it a gem or another source, to try and mitigate that?
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on to the next list. We've got Nerfs Enemies, and these ones, they all have different ways that they're actually nerfing the enemies. Some of these are ones that I've used previously, like Seeping Bile, and also Bloody Reach. Some of them, I would say, you probably agree, some of these now, there are other options. I will quickly touch on Mana Flux, because this gem was an event gem again, so it won't be available to everyone in game. If you weren't in game when that event was in, you will have missed that one. But do you want to just say, I mean, what would your top picks be from this list?
Right, okay. Well, Seeping Bile remains one of my absolute favourites. So that, again, I think I am a bit of a fan on that one. So other people have started to really move away from Seeping Bile. But if you're using dot builds and you have other effects to help proc it, Seeping Bile, I think, is still... I still regard it... I think people probably wouldn't put it in S tier. I might personally consider it somewhere near there, but it's maybe more of an A tier gem or lower, depending on who the user is. But the nerf in question there is reducing movement speed. Maybe the term nerfs enemies is maybe sounds a bit vague, but I've tried to clarify it by explaining on each gem in this list. Frozen Heart, that one chills enemy attackers. Now you've got two chills. You've got the chill when it initially procs, But from rank 3 onwards, you've also got the chills when you are making attacks. So the gem procs when you are attacked, and it chills. But then you're also chill effects once you're attacking, once it's procced. So that's kind of like a double chill on that one.
Yeah.
Hellbound Desire. So this one reduces the duration of beneficial effects by X%. Obviously, that depends on the gem rank.
Yes.
And I believe that is from rank 3 onwards. So but I'm including it on this list as something that you might want to consider. I mean, obviously, if you're against players that are really requiring beneficial effects and the duration of those on their skills, being able to use Hellbound Desire against them can really turn the odds in a PvP situation in your favour.
Yeah.
Now, Bloody Reach chance to stay out, I believe at rank 10 it's like 2%. It is a ridiculous, and that's probably even reduced by the strife in PvP.
Yeah.
I've included it on this list just because it falls into the category.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it for this aspect of the gem.
Yeah.
Abiding Curse, I believe I've mentioned about Abiding Curse before. This is one of my absolute favourites as a support player in PvP.
Yeah.
Because you are reducing the attack and movement speed of your opponents, not just for yourself, but obviously when it's things like reducing movement speed, you can't reduce movement speed of your opponent for you and then they can move at full speed for other people on your team.
Yeah.
So you are playing a team role with this gem. This gem is now deleted from the drop pool, but if people are considering a support build, I still regard it as one of the very, very best. Pierceling, we mentioned this one before. I believe there are just much better gems out there these days. I wouldn't personally use it anymore, but if you've got it available, maybe you've got it as a reso gem for one of your other gems, you could include it. And like I say, it does have that synergy with Chipper Stoneflesh. Now, Mana Flux, this is a gem that it really didn't land well when it was released. It was an event gem. I personally love this gem, but we will maybe come on to that in a separate section later on in this video. But ultimately, if you are below 50% life, it silences your opponent's skills.
Yeah.
And that is a brilliant way of turning the tables on your attackers. But if you are a class that has a lot of healing on it, for example, a druid, it might not work quite as well for you because you do need to be below the 50% life to get that effect.
Yeah.
So, but that one will come up in another list. Now, one of my favourite 1-star gems, the Black Rose, does the Immobilize. So you just if you get this all the way up to rank 10, each increment increases, or it has the two effects of how long they're immobilized for, and no, I think it is just the duration and how much impact it has.
Yeah.
But yeah, Black Rose is a really, really good gem for PvP if you're playing. It's really for a support build, I would say.
Yeah.
But 3.6 seconds, even if that is strifed, it can still really slow down your opponents, which might be your role within a battleground.
Yeah.
Falter Grasp, again, another great 1-star gem. So you need to be able to do a critical hit, but that will prevent dashes. And again, the dashes are prevented for, I think, about 3 or maybe 3.6 seconds again. But that is as long as you're able to do the critical hit, so you would need some level of crit on your gear. That procs, and I believe it's got a per enemy cooldown of 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So it works on each player as an individual case, which I like those kind of gems where it isn't a case of, oh, well, if you've used it once, then you have to wait 20 seconds to use it again.
Yeah.
And then Taxman's Pity, one of the newer gems. Now, critical hits reduce healing received by the enemy. Maybe this combined with Hellbound Desire, potentially you could start building something that could be useful.
Yeah.
But I believe that just the amount of reduction in terms of the healing, it's a bit limited. It's a 1-star gem. I believe there are other gems that are better out there, but it
Yeah.
does include on this list.
Yeah.
But that's my coverage of those. Unless you've got anything else to add, Ricia.
No, not really. I mean, Fall to Grasp, as you mentioned, that one's a good one for PvP. And just to touch on what when you were saying, obviously that it's per per opponent. It's where you need to look at the wording on the gem description. So the actual gem description is cannot occur on the same target more often than once every 20 seconds. So as you mentioned, it's that's per target. So each target, the cooldown is 20 seconds. It's not 20 seconds, like you already said, and then having to wait. And it's this is what the importance is, like you've said before, about reading the fine print. Is actually reading the way things are worded, and I think that can be confusing for people, especially if English isn't necessarily your first language and if you're playing the game in English. So that's where, again, I'm hoping that these guides will come in handy to people.
Yeah, I hope that this does help highlight for the non-English or people that don't have English as their first language, because I do believe a lot of the time the subtleties of this do get a little bit lost, because also I think some of the times where they're translated from Chinese, they aren't necessarily the best descriptions
exactly
either. Come across a couple of descriptions that could be better.
Definitely. So that is the Nerfs Enemy categories. We've got a few more categories to get through yet. So next up we have Immobilize, and we have Fated Trail here and the Black Rose. Obviously we have touched on both of these already, but they both work in opposite ways. So there is potential to use both of these in a build together.
Yes. So yeah, Fated Trail and the Black Rose. On the Fated Trail, the trigger is that you attack them. So if you are dealing damage and you're using the Fated Trail gem, on triggering it, that immobilizes them for, it's officially 1.5 seconds.
Yeah.
From rank 1. But the point is, in PvP, that would be strifed.
Yeah.
So that's another consideration there.
Yeah.
The Black Rose lasts for longer. As said before, up to 3.6 seconds at rank 10. But the trigger this time is they attack you.
Yeah.
So this one is very much more on the defensive side.
Yes.
And it helps to, both of them will help to slow down enemies in a battleground.
Yeah. So Immobilize is quite a small category, but the gems that are in there, they basically work in an opposite way to each other. The Black Rose is definitely really beneficial in PvP, especially for the non-resonance based PvP modes like Alley of Blood, Conqueror, Wild Brawl. Really, really nice gem for that.
I'm still using the Black Rose in PvP, Ricia. That's that's part of my core build at the moment. So
one of the oldest gems, but really useful.
My main reso is just above 8k now.
Yeah.
But because I play support, I just find that the 1-star gems really suit me so much better, and they better suit my play style.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Black Rose is one that I use because of the role I want to play in PvP.
Yeah. So after Immobilize, we have Evasion Rating, and in this category we've got just 2 gems again. So we've got Golden Firmament, the 5-star gem, and we've got Interminous Stone, the 1-star gem. So do you want to explain the Evasion Rating ones?
Right. Well, Evasion Rating, there are other sources of Evasion Rating within the game.
Yeah.
There are certain affixes. Richard, I don't know if you might be able to potentially include those affixes.
I can bring something up on the screen.
Video. If you've got the opportunity to do that, would be good. But ultimately, there are affixes that will benefit you in terms of giving you more Evasion Rating. And then, so the trigger for Golden Firmament is dealing damage. Evasion Rating, I believe it's from rank 3 onwards, but it can just ultimately Evasion Rating is based against your opponent's accuracy.
That's it. Yeah.
So I like to, when I'm doing my reforges, I often like to either have something in Evasion Rating, but not reforges. What's the word when you do enchanting?
Yeah.
Enchantments. When I'm using enchantments, it's nice to have a little bit of Evasion Rating. And similarly, if you have the capacity to include it onto your gear, it's certain pieces of gear, having the I've forgotten its name again, accuracy rating on maybe on one piece of gear, it can just give you that edge against certain opponents. But yeah, the Golden Firmament, that is an aspect of it. It's not the main aspect.
Yeah.
But if people are using the golden firmaments, it can be a useful aspect.
Yeah.
Especially if you are able to increase your evasion rating. And there are even some of the gear, the craftable, what they call ancient legendaries.
Yeah.
I use the ancient legendaries that have evasion rating on them. So there was the helm, and there is currently the chest, and now it's the shoulder. And I believe the shoulder still has the evasion rating option, doesn't it, Ricia?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there's that. And then another one that fits into the evasion rating category, but in Terminus Stone, I'm a little bit surprised by this gem because, evasion rating on it, I believe it increases also your attacking as well, but the evasion is maybe the secondary aspect of it. But it does require the player to be moving.
Yeah.
But maybe, a newer player, low spender, someone new to the game, it might be of interest to you, and it fits into this category, so I've included it on this list.
Yeah.
I believe that covers evasion rating, unless there's anything more.
Yeah, it's quite a small category, really. And Terminus Stone is obviously one of the newer gems, but you do have to be moving for it to be working for both aspects of that gem. So it's increasing your damage as well as increasing the evasion rating. And
actually, that might be worth mentioning. That it'll be good for players that have some level of immunity to CC.
Yeah.
So if you've got a CC immunity as part of your character or as a particular essence, that is a consideration, because that will help you keep you moving so that your Terminus Stone will work.
Yeah, exactly. So next we've got the unique property. So there's only 3 gems in this category again. And these are ones that really don't fit into anything.
Yeah. Apart from maybe Blessed Pebble, I don't think there's much. I don't think anyone's ever used a Zod Stone under any circumstances. So I think we can move on from that one. Low's Focus Gaze increases damage of your charge skills. I think there was there some kind of wizard essence recently that had a charge on it where you were trying to send up, was it Meteor?
Yeah, I'm not sure which essence has been removed, but there were some skills that obviously charged up. And so this would work with those, but as a 1-star gem, it's not one that I've actually seen anyone using, to be honest.
I've got a copy of Zod. I think I've got 2 Zod stones sitting in my inventory, but I've got them extracted. I just use them if they're needed as reso.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I've got those. Blessed Pebble, I think it's quite good for a low spender. It's one that I might have considered. I think by the time it came out, I'd maybe started to spend a bit in the game. So I never particularly used it for that purpose. But I have used it occasionally for things like if you're doing shard collection, just for a bit more movement speed. But I think we mentioned that earlier in this video. So, that's maybe a potential use case. But I've just called it unique property, just so we were trying to cover every gem, by giving every gem a category. And this is just a wash-up list of the ones that don't really fit with any others.
Yeah, exactly. So we still have a few more categories. So next up, we've got below 50% life. So these are ones that basically trigger once you're below 50% life. And again, there's not a huge amount of gems in this category. We have added Blood-Soaked Jade at the end as well.
Yes, late addition by me to the. Richard's very kindly updated the slide to include this one. But that one just reduces the damage taken by a certain percentage, but you need a minimum of rank 3.
Yes.
The trigger for this one is if you drop below 50% life, you just get a flat reduction in damage from Blood-Soaked Jade. This starts from rank 3. I believe it's 1.5% damage reduction at rank 3, up to a maximum of 6% at rank 9. But that is available with Blood-Soaked Jade, and as long as you are below 50% life, you will get that additional small defensive bonus. Bear in mind, it will be strifed in PvP.
Yeah.
Then onto the main aspects of the list, which is Spiteful Blood. If you drop below 50% life, it triggers an Absorb shield. It's not the biggest shield in the game, but it is useful. So whilst it's more of an attacking type of gem in general, it does have that aspect to it. So the Absorb Shield procs at that time. And then we've also got Crimson Behelit, and that one, when you drop below 50% life, it triggers fear and it reduces damage taken.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, the opposite for Crimson Behelit is also a separate proc, but that's when you're above 50% life. So I won't go into more detail about that because I've mentioned it earlier in the vid. But actually, there is one missing from this slide, Ricia. Mana Flux. I'm sure that was originally on the list, but somehow it's not come on here. So Mana Flux also, when you drop below 50% life, it has the effect of silencing your nearby enemies.
Yeah.
So that one should be on this list as well. And I've actually used all three of those together. So Spiteful Blood and Crimson Behelit and Mana Flux, all three of them together. Now, whilst Mana Flux has that delay, it has a delay where you've got a 20-second cooldown. And then the act of going either below 50% life or above it then uses the Mana Flux bonus.
Yeah.
But that, if you can silence your enemies. And the other thing is with Spiteful Blood, you've also got the aspect from rank 1 onwards where it will block primary attacks from other players.
Yeah.
So you can be in a situation where a player can neither do a primary attack on you, nor can they use skills against you because they've been silenced.
Yeah.
So the three of those gems all work really well together. And I built on the Diablo.tv, if you filter on the name Quetz, Quetz, and search for all, and it's I believe it's under Druid, but you should be able to find all my builds. There will be a build in there called Ultra Poisonous Toad. And I used all these gems together, and it was the best PvP build I ever had. Unfortunately, it also used Endwinter, which has now been made obsolete. But the actual fundamental thinking of the build is there. And I've also explained in the notes as to all the aspects of how the gem works together. So you could maybe read that alongside watching this video and see how those three gems trigger together.
Yeah.
The other one on this list is Respite Stone. Now, this is only a 1-star gem. And if you drop below 50%, it triggers a bit of block chance. So I've just included it for completeness.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the best gem available.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for block chance, there's other ways you can get it from the reforging in game, and I think you can get it on set items as well. So it does depend on where you want to get it from, but obviously it just completes that list on, as you said, the below 50% life.
Yes, there's a common trigger on all of these gems, and it doesn't mean you necessarily need to use them together.
Yeah.
But just being aware that if you feel like you're in a situation where you're going to be dropping below 50% life, what kind of bonuses you can get or effects to maybe turn the tables on your opponents. Yeah. These are the gems to consider.
Exactly. So next up we have the effect triggers at opponent's location. Now this was added after our discussion in one of the first videos.
Yes. Now
actually,
so this is a new category. This one, Ricia. On the attacking gems video, you'll see if you search on the timestamps, there's a timestamp in there from me, and you can hear the exact moment that Ricia gave me the idea for this list.
Yeah.
So this one's because of you, Ricia.
It's my fault.
Yeah. No. This is the wonderful thing about having these discussions and being able to learn from other people. And you gave me a really good insight about Starfire Shard.
Yeah.
Do you want to just repeat it here now, just to explain about this effect and how it triggers?
Yeah, so with Starfire Shard, it basically will trigger on an enemy. So they don't have to be nearby or anything like that. They could be on the other side of the battleground map, and it will trigger on them. I actually had it on myself in Vault yesterday, so I hadn't been hit by an enemy player, but I was hit by their Starfire Shard. So I couldn't even see the players on my screen, but Starfire Shard triggered on top of my character. So it's a gem that is a lot more powerful and a lot more useful than people think, and it's really worth using. So if you manage to get a dot on a player, it could then trigger Starfire Shard on them, and so you could literally be on the idle, or they could be on the idle, and then Starfire Shard might trigger. And if the Starfire Shard does not kill them, if you have still got that dot effect on them, obviously the Starfire Shard will have the burning underneath the player as well, and this may actually trigger your other damage over time effects on them. So it's actually a lot more useful than people give it credit for.
And that's the thing, it can also burn the ground.
Yes.
So it can also affect the nearby enemies. But it is just that one very short burst of very high damage.
Yeah.
But it does have that 20-second cooldown. I honestly, Ricia, I've not used this gem in PvP for years, but based on what you said, I might actually start trying that out again and maybe at least try it in the test battlegrounds and see if it is more effective than I'd given it credit for.
Yeah, it's worth trying. I had people like laughing at me when I was originally using it, and then when they were saying like, "Oh, hang on a minute, your Starfire Shard triggered near me, but you weren't my side of the map," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's how it works."
And you're still there high on the list of most kills, aren't you? You're often getting MVPs, aren't you, in battlegrounds?
Oh, not MVP, but I get a lot of assists.
Days, but, but at least getting assists.
Yes, yeah.
And then More of the Deep. This one has the same trigger of dealing damage. In fact, all of the ones on this list share that dealing damage trigger effect. And I believe I mentioned when we were talking about our attacking gems that the YouTuber VK did actually mention about these synergies, and I believe that he was saying it was Starfire Shard, and I believe Stormvault had just been released at the time. And then you've got, and they aren't in the same category, but Roiling Consequence can also they all share this dealing damage proc, and you can just build up a whole bunch of effects all at the same time and just do a lot of damage, and especially if it happens on the idle. So it's one of the reasons that I wanted to kind of draw people's attention to this aspect of it. And so, More of the Deep will mention how you've got the Armour Break, you've got the Sea Monster, and it comes up and it kind of basically just grabs them, especially if that happens on the idle and it pulls them in.
Yeah.
And if you get them pulled in at that point and you've got the Starfire Shard on them and other effects as well, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
And then to keep the effect going, you've got Haunt Coil. Now, the trigger on that one is dealing damage, but it's a 10% chance per opponent. But if you get them haunted as well, then they turn into almost like a detonator on their what's the word? Opposite of opponent. Yeah, allies.
Yes, yeah.
So that's a good aspect to it as well. Another one that I've used in the past and really quite enjoyed is Cold Confidence.
Yeah.
And it does summon the pillar. And you do see it summon where the opponent is, especially if you are a ranged class and you're doing that. It's quite nice to see it proc where the enemy is rather than by yourself.
Yeah.
And just to know that you can be continuing to deal damage over a few seconds. It lasts for 6 seconds unless the pillar, I think it's got 500% of your life at top rank. Obviously, that'll be strifed in PvP, but it'll still be quite a substantial chunk of damage. They need to effectively kill the pillar. Otherwise, it keeps going for the full 6 seconds, which will be extended by the potency and/or Baron and/or Misery Elixir gem.
Yeah.
So there are ways to kind of, again, further amplify these effects. And I have mentioned, just as a kind of a note here, you can sort of see it at the base of this list. You've got other gems that might synergize quite nicely with these types of gems.
Yeah.
And the ones I've identified for immediately, but it wouldn't be limited to these. Moss Thorn, which I believe is a very underrated gem. We'll come on to that one in a moment. And there's also Seeping Bile. And if you can trigger these effects at another location, particularly if it's on the idle, those type of gems can help proc those effects and keep them going.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I will just touch on is Cold Confident, one way or one game mode that is really good for is actually Shadow War and Alley of Blood, because that can trigger on the towers and actually be doing the damage for you. And then it means that you are also able to attack the towers, because the towers will actually attack the Cold Confident pillar rather than you. So that's because it's like a summon thing.
Very good example.
Yeah.
Again, another reason why we have these conversations, Ricia. It's so great to get those kind of insights. I hadn't specifically thought of that particular use case.
That's where I've seen the most use for it.
It's only a 2-star gem, isn't it?
But, it's only 2-star, but it works really well in that way. And as you said, if you've got a damage over time as well, so if you're using, a burn bleed or a poison alongside Cold Confident, and that is literally sitting on their tower, on the enemy tower, dealing damage while you're also attacking it, but not getting hit by the tower because the tower's attacking the ice pillar. That's a really nice way of actually making use of that gem. So maybe not in all of your PvP builds, but potentially as a low or mid spender, using it in a Shadow War build or an Alley of Blood build works really nicely for that one.
Right. Anyone in the Stellar Nova clan listening to this broadcast, please take note.
So I think that is that category complete, the effects triggered at opponent's location. We have one category left, which again came from our first chat, I believe it was. Yes. So this is Counterattack. So Pete, do you want to talk through this last part of the other gems categories?
So again, this was sort of inspired by what you said, Ricia, because I then started mentioning about Mossthorn and that counterattack aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to really just distill into a list so that people are aware of a series of gems that have a counterattack aspect to them. I am using the term counterattack a little bit loosely here because some of the gems don't necessarily, for example, the Black Rose, it's not an attack as such. It does grab the player, but it doesn't do damage to them. It just immobilizes them.
Yeah.
But we'll work down this list, and I will just explain as to why I've put this category together.
Yeah.
So, one of the original gems from the game, Blessing of the Worthy. Now, its trigger is a percentage chance after taking damage to proc the effect. I can't remember if it is 20% or whether it's a set value or whether it varies. But basically, if you take damage, it will then unleash retribution on all nearby enemies.
Yeah.
So it deals the damage equal to Y, so that's a variable. And then of your current life. That's the thing to bear in mind. You need to be at quite high life to take full advantage of this gem. So if you're a barb on using if you're a barb and you've got Undying Rage.
Yes.
This might not be the right gem for you.
Yeah.
I believe actually this might be the reason they changed the gem's description, because I don't think that was clear at the beginning. I think they actually I think the gem worked the same way, but they had to amend the wording.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a controversy at this moment.
We won't talk about that.
Yeah. And then there's all damage you take, and decreases all damage you take by Z percentage for 6 seconds.
Yeah.
So I believe at maximum rank it gets to, is it 20% or 28% damage reduction? But again, that would be strifed in PvP. I personally wouldn't recommend this gem for this counterattack aspect, but I mean, it does make the list. If you've got it maybe in your inventory, you want to try it out. I did test it in a couple of builds for PvP, but I felt like there were other stronger options, so that's why I haven't persisted with it.
Yeah.
Now, Kirsling, we've mentioned about this before. The trigger is that you are attacked by an opponent. You've got a 15% chance. That's going to proc by pretty much anyone attacking you.
Yeah.
So you can assume that every 20 seconds that somebody attacks you, you'll be able to do this and do it to the enemies. But I don't think all it does is blinds them, and it doesn't. Well, if you've got a certain level of resistance, I just find the effect goes away so quickly.
Yeah.
I've barely noticed it. Blink and you'll miss it. So I wouldn't. Although it makes them list, I wouldn't recommend it. Mossthorn, however, I have mentioned that I am a bit of a fan. I'd love, actually, maybe people can add in the comments. Does anyone use Mossthorn and like it? And if so, how do you use it? Because I might be the only fan of this gem. But basically, by taking damage, you have this retaliatory thorn. But the thing I really loved about this gem when I first read the description is every half second. Now, the gem lasts for 6 seconds. Obviously, that would be strifed in PvP, but it would be extended by Baron, harmful effects, by potency, and by the Misery Elixir gem. And Mossthorn, what's great is I see this a really good way to protect yourself or to cover ranged enemies as part of your offering. So if you had a spot that was available in your build and setup for PvP, and you know you've got ranged attackers coming at you, this is a way of getting them back. And especially if you've got some kind of effects to send with that thorn trigger. So if up to every half second you can be attacked by an enemy and it will retaliate. But if you've got something like Seeping Bile and maybe you're using Everlasting Torment as well, plus Mossthorn, you're already starting to see a real reason why this gem could be better than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try and pretend it's the best gem in the game. There are much better gems than Mossthorn, but I think there are some players that could benefit from it, which is why I want to highlight in this video.
Yeah.
Right, now, Defiant Soul. I don't think this gem's been mentioned before in any of our vids, Ricia.
No, I think this is the first time it's come up, actually.
But each time you block an attack, you deal this X percentage of damage to all nearby enemies, and then take a small reduced damage for the next 3 seconds. I don't know, maybe on a low spender, this could be of some use, but
yeah, potentially
really,
entry-level PvP as a new player.
Entry level. I don't see much use beyond there. I mean, I've tried kind of putting together the various gems here and seeing if it's worth creating a kind of formal counterattack build, but it just wasn't particularly strong.
Yeah.
So if I was going to use this, I'd maybe be looking at using one gem only, or maybe 2.
Yeah.
And then coming down to the last one on the list would be the Black Rose, which I've already said I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
And it's each time you're attacked and you have this percentage chance to summon vines, immobilize a player for a certain number of seconds.
Yeah.
That's it. So the chance increases as you build your gem ranks. And on the alternate gem ranks, you have the increased duration for the immobilize.
Yeah.
So that's how the gem works in terms of how you build it. But if I was going to use 2 gems, I might use both Mossthorn and Black Rose.
Yeah, definitely.
But overall, Black Rose is my pick from this list.
Yeah, I would say the same. For me, Black Rose would be the most useful one. As I've already mentioned, if you're someone that's slightly higher resonance, Black Rose is one to consider potentially for the resonance-free PvP modes. So things like Alley of Blood, Conqueror, Wild Brawl, really, really useful in those instances. But also if you're a mid to low spender, I would say that that's a really good gem to actually have in your build, especially if you're looking for something that's going to be a little bit defensive. But yeah, that's...
And really, it's just really good for a support player, because if you could just have it so that you're immobilizing opponents,
exactly,
those opponents can't be doing damage and causing mischief on the battlegrounds. So if you're able to get these effects going, but bear in mind, you do need to be attacked.
Yes.
So you probably want to use some level of tankiness, some sort of gems that will give you shielding, or somehow, so maybe a Hawk Coil in defense stance, and you can be looking at things like a Phoenix Ashes. Well, maybe that's maybe an extreme example. I'm a fan of that, but it's the cooldown, it's quite long.
Yeah.
But Frozen Hearts, also Spiteful Blood gives a bit of a shield, but there's also some quite strong 2-star gems that you can use to reduce damage. So maybe something like that, and putting together this as a final piece of a build to give you that, to try and slow down the opponents. So I would say that that's more for a support player in PvP.
Yeah, definitely. So that brings us to the conclusion of other gems. So this is actually the meatiest segment. This is the longest video of this series so far. Myself and Pete will be getting together again at some point to actually test out some different gem synergies. So we'll be testing some bits on my characters to see how we can improve builds or change builds up for different instances, and I'm looking forward to doing that at some point in the near future. As always, I will link the Diablo TV website in the caption for this video. That will give you all the information on all of the legendary gems we've discussed today in detail. So if you're looking at changing some builds or playing with some ideas that Pete may have inspired you to do so from this video, you'll be able to do that through the Diablo TV website. But for now, that is it from us. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. We really hope you find this helpful, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.
Official Diablo partner